Hey everyone and welcome back. Now today we've got Tyler joining us from the Crypto Catch Up, and I'm sure as some of you probably know, Tyler is quite well known and well thought of within the Solana space. And so I figured instead of having me talk about Solana today, let's have Tyler on the channel and he can kind of fill us in with what's going on. So Tyler, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We're getting a couple days of green here. Of course, people are overreacting to the green already, going long and being crazy. But it has been nice to have a decent weekend where we can enjoy the weekend away and not not get wrecked all weekend long. So not too bad.
Good. Yeah, and that's I've been saying and seeing the same thing. It's the levels, like I feel like whenever the market just has inaction going on, the first sign of action, people just go nuts because they're like, oh, finally something's happening, and like I don't really get it, but it's just part of the game.
It's just too easy. And it's kind of frustrating because you and I have spoken about it before. Just in these moments where things are boring, it's when people lose the most. It's because anytime the market goes in either direction, everyone just like doubles down, triples down. Then it just goes right back and they get liquidated. And it's like, yo, we've been doing this for 170 days now. Like, you should be able to tell that shouldn't commit to anything until we just break completely out of this zone that we're in. But it's a fight that it ain't worth fighting. So it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So cool. Well, I know we're here to talk about Solana today, so let's go on ahead and dive right into that. So the first question that I have for you is, what's going on with Solana?
Yeah. So not a lot is going on in the short term, or so it would seem. Like if you go out to say the 4 hours on the short term and you just kind of look at the last month, it's just been a consistent downtrend, been a little boring, and everybody's kind of just sick of it, right? But what I've come to recognize is that if you really can zoom this thing out and just look at what's happening from more of a macro perspective, we're in a very good spot for Solana, especially compared to the rest of the market. Now, let's kind of break this down. So the first thing, just look at this in general. If you look at something like Ethereum getting smashed, right? I mean, absolutely right. This has been quite rough, honestly. The fact that we had structure broke out, complete back test back to the downside, that's rough. That's a rough move. You look at something like even Bitcoin, for reference, or not that one, this one. You look at this consistent downtrend, lower highs, lower lows, over and over and over again. But whenever you look at something like Solana, we're seeing a bit of a different story. Solana's actually maintaining and sustaining the levels in which it's been in since we saw kind of the beginning of this back towards March. I told you all, especially on this the last collab that we did about Solana, that it had just recently broke this macro 618 to 786 Fibonacci zone, and if it could successfully backtest and hold some support, flip this resistance into support, this could be the foundation Solana needs to make that move up to $300, $350, $400, and it seems to be doing it quite well, especially over the last few days, right? Whenever Bitcoin really started to melt quite recently, we actually saw Solana come back down to this level for the first time. Because sure, we had these moments on the dailies where we wick down to it, maybe even there, wick, etc. This is the first time Solana's prices actually come back down, right? We got this chop, the ups and downs, and put volume in on top of this level in a moment in which this market was pulling back. And the fact that Solana's price, as it was, dumping, did start to go sideways. You could see that bullish momentum entering, seeing the bull stepping in, seeing the bears respecting this liquidity zone. It's a very good sign that this is holding up as it is. Now, it's not to say that it can't continue downwards, but it's just to go to show that the bulls are stepping in as we need them to at this liquidity zone, which again could open up the doors to the upside. You compare that to the fact that Solana's TVL, its total value locked, or just the overall size of its ecosystem, as many people like to consider it, is consistently growing. Even in a moment in which things have been sideways, even in a moment in which the market is going down, we've seen Solana's TVL consistently higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, which is a good sign to show that its ecosystem is growing and thriving without needing the market to be doing that well. You look at something like last week's fund flow reports, man. $643 million worth of outflows for Bitcoin, $98 million worth of outflows for Ethereum. Solana coming in positive at $6.2 million worth of inflows. So from a well perspective, an accumulation perspective, a TVL perspective, a fundamental perspective, and a technical perspective, Solana is holding up quite well. And so because of that, all this stuff combined, I'm just like, oh, this is great. Like, we're in a really good spot, all things considered. And so I'm definitely bullish, and I have rather high conviction as per usual. I'm a perma bull, it seems like. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I do think that especially the ETH fans, they've had a rough go of things over the past couple of months. But yeah, I mean, like you said, even Bitcoin, we are still sitting in what appears to be, possibly a bull flag, which is good for Bitcoin. So like structurally, it still looks decent. But yeah, it definitely is still bleeding down consistently. Where Solana we have seen hold relatively well, which has been good. So I guess this kind of leads right into my next question, which is, you know, I know you kind of showed this on the chart just recently, but do you think this is the bottom, or do you think, you know, we potentially have further to fall? Where do you think we, obviously not financial advice, nobody actually has any idea, but
Yes,
just
it
based
is
on what you're
financial
saying. But, you know, based on what we've seen, like what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, surely. So yeah, just kind of looking at it, you know, again, it's very hard to tell whether the bottom's at, because again, you know, moments of these boring moments, man, you never quite know what's going to happen. It's not, you know, uncommon for these things to have these things or have these things, right? And so you can never quite tell. But what I do know is that from a historical perspective, especially throughout this year, this does look very similar to the several other times we put in nearly a bottom. You know, looking at a couple things, price, easy to gauge. Previous point of resistance that we had in here, that was a yearly high. We broke above it. We put in a little mini cup and handle at the top of that move. We broke above it. We've come back down, and we've been holding support above this previous point of resistance on multiple occasions. This also aligns with the 618-786 Fibonacci zone. So we're holding on top of that. When you look at an RSI perspective, we are now within this little 30-ish threshold in which we historically will find a bottom. You know, where we are right now, if we just kind of let's just draw a little horizontal line. You can see all these times we're around this zone is around the time we're finding a bottom. And yeah, sometimes we go lower than that, right? And that does imply that we could go a little lower from here. But overall, unless we're in like the bear market, we do usually hold up here. Now, this actually does translate well into what we're seeing from, you know, the Bollinger Bands, for example. You look at your Bollinger Bands here. Currently, we're at the bottom side of it. Not only are we at the bottom side, we're coming off of being at the top side. When you get swings from top side, surpass mid-level to bottom side, that's usually a good sign that you're going to try to return to mid-level, which in this instance is around $140. We zoom this out to like the, you know, or even actually one other thing I wanted to point out in terms of buy zones. Okay, let's turn this off and let's try to see if we're going to get this bad boy going up here. You can see HG Algo, the buy zones going off right here, right where we are. The last time this went off, we saw this move. The time before that, we saw this move. The time before that, this move. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. And so getting these buy zones here is another great sign. You look at your weekly charts to even draw it out even more. I mean, you look at your Bollinger Bands, for example. Turn this off. Bam, bam. We're at the bottom side of our Bollinger Bands for the very first time since the bear market. That's big. That's a big thing. You look at your RSI. Let me just see if I can get that pulled up there. I don't know where it went. No, wait 1 second. So look at this. I mean, our RSI on the weeklies is now below 50. To put this into perspective, when we saw the summer lull of 2021, we just hit 50, right? And that was a much more dramatic fall. I mean, that was in 1 week. We saw Solana's price fall. What? I remember it being like 70% or something absurd. Yeah, 70% in 1 week. And we were higher on the RSI than we are now. And so when you compare all of these things, of course, I think that we're either at a bottom, close to a bottom, and that we will try to make some type of resort back towards the upside at some given point, especially when you compare how well Solana's performed against other assets and other indicators like we went over earlier. So again, a couple long-winded answers for you there, but I like to get in depth. So there we go.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful and super useful. No, it definitely does. Like it looks like we're finding support. This is the point in the market where I kind of have, you know, like difficulties, right? Because I like to see confluence within the market, and I feel like it's kind of difficult because it's like Solana looks really strong, ETH looks really weak, Bitcoin looks like fine, but looks like it's still going to bleed further, right? Likely until the end of September, October range, which historically would make a lot of sense. So this is the point in time where it's like, you know, like we've been seeing kind of generally in the market, there's a lot of indecision. There's a lot of like nobody really knows. And so, yeah, I mean, it definitely does look really, really strong for Solana, and hopefully we see that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of where we go and how things look, because Solana itself does look really, really good, but I do know that things like to follow Bitcoin. So it'll be interesting to see if it can kind of continue to hold that. So, yeah. Anyway, the last question I have before I let you go here is, you know, what are your overall thoughts on kind of where we're at in the market? You know, obviously Solana looks good, but big, macro term, what are your thoughts on that, and how do you think you see things unfolding over the next couple months?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, where we're at right now, in my opinion, is I just think it's too fearful. And I keep saying it, and people on my channel, they get pissed, because I just say it over and over and over again. But the thing about it is, it just does not make sense to me. You know, like the amount of fear we're seeing in this market it's almost irrational. I mean, you have to put something into perspective, right? In the last month, we have spent 86% of that time in fear, which is quite ridiculous. Now, to put that into perspective of all things, you know, let's go in all time. on average, we only spend about 32% of the time in fear. We're at 80% in the last month. And I question that. Like, I ask it in my comment sections all the time. What are you so scared of? Like, what's everyone so scared of? And then I get the normal responses, right? Well, there's talks of a recession, so they're going to put a label on it. Okay. That's the same thing. It's like, the joke I make on the channel is like, when you first start talking to a girl and like, y'all do everything together, you go everywhere together, you're not talking to anybody else, whatever. Then you're like, no, we're boyfriend and girlfriend, but nothing really changes. That's kind of where we are as an economy. I would even say things are getting somewhat better now, right? Because although maybe the economy's not particularly better, people are used to the environment we're in now. Stability always is better than instability, right? And so from that perspective, things are better. Presidential election coming up. People are fearful about that. I'm like, why? Worst case scenario for crypto in general, the worst case scenario is Kamala Harris wins because they're a little bit less pro crypto than Trump, and it stays exactly the same, if not a little bit better than we have been for the last 4 years. Or Trump wins and things get great. The war situation has somewhat gotten better, which without getting too deep into that, obviously. And so to me, it's like everyone's so scared. And I'm like, for what? And in moments like this, in which I see so many things that are telling me like, hey, it's probably a good time to buy. October, November, and December have a 100% green month rate on months of halvings, or years of halving. Sorry. Now, there's not to say there won't be an outlier, and this year could be that. And this year has been weird all the way around. But it just goes to show that in a time like this, where there are so many good signs, so much history saying that where we're heading into is bullish, and a market that's so fearful for no good reason, in my opinion, I think it's a good time to buy. I just, it's weird. But, it's almost so obvious to me that I'm like, am I wrong? Is it so obvious that it's actually just going to do exactly what it's like, I don't know. It's odd. I don't know. We're in a weird spot, but I think it's a good time to buy overall. So
yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. There's some times where it's like I see some of these things and I do feel like I'm living in a land of delusion, because it's like I don't really get it. The other thing that I always talk about, pretty frequently, we just had a macroeconomic video on the channel, and one of the things that I mentioned is like, maybe not like the like minor recessions that are, a little bit of like stagnation in the economy and then things pull out of it, but like the big crashes, because people have been talking about the everything bubble for what, like 10 years now or something, right? Like this is some of the things that kind of makes me like question some of this stuff, is because usually when these very damaging crashes happen, think back to the Great Depression, think back to 2008, think back to the COVID crash, like these things happen when just nobody expects them to like come around, right? And so it's like everybody's been expecting the everything crash for 10 years. So like, why would it happen? And like, how would a damaging crash happen if we're all expecting a damaging crash to happen, right? Like that kind of defeats the purpose of it. Yeah. So, that's kind of the way that I've been looking at it. It does kind of make me laugh a little bit. So anyway, thanks so much for coming in and joining us on the channel today, Tyler. It is always good to have you. I know that you're super tuned into the Solana and ecosystem, and overall, you do really high quality technical analysis as well. You're your technical analysis is what my technical analysis could hope to be someday. So, you definitely do provide a lot of high quality analysis there, which I think is really good. So, thanks for joining us on the channel. Also, to the viewers, if you guys found this information helpful and useful, please do give both myself and Tyler a like and a subscribe. His channel is the Crypto Catch Up. I will be having it somewhere on the screen in the end card, so it'll be very easy for you to go to his channel and subscribe and go check out some of his videos as well. He does overall market updates, which are really useful and kind of a good way to just catch up on the overall market, right? Imagine that. So also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, whatever, just want to chat, interact, anything like that, please do leave me a comment below. I do read and respond to all of my comments. So if you have anything that you want to go over, or you have any questions, anything like that you want to ask specifically, just let me know and I'll be getting back to you on that. So anyway, thank you again, and we'll see you next video.
Peace.